What's up, you guys? Today's animated series review is about a group of mummies whom are awakened in present day to protect the ancestors of their pharaoh in order to stop an evil sorcerer from obtaining its reincarnated spirit for immortality, and I'm talking about Mummies Alive. Mummies Alive, the animated series, aired in 1997 of only one season with a total of 42 episodes. Our story begins in San Francisco, California, where a kid named Presley Carnarvon is visiting his mother whom works at the museum, showcasing a new exhibit for the treasure of Rapses. When wandering off into other areas, he is immediately under the surveillance of these stone/clay armies named Shabtis and their leader named Scarab, who's an evil sorcerer. Due to these events, 4 sarcophagi are opened and out come 4 Egyptian godlike mummies to rescue Presley, and by yelling out their catchphrase, "with the strength of Ra" and "let's kick Tut," they transform with special abilities and armor. After having a brief victory, the mummies inform Presley that they're here and obligated to protect him from any source of danger or harm, because that's what they did in the past, since he is the son of the ruler of Egypt, Amenhotep, named Prince Rapses. And in regards to Scarab, his goal is to capture him for immortality. Despite being in disbelief, Presley eventually invites the mummies over to his house to lay low until establishing base at the museum shaped like a sphinx. So within the mummies you have Ja-Kal, the leader, who dons the armor power of a falcon; Rath, the wise inventor, who summons magic containing the armor power of a snake; Nefer-Tina, the only female with quick agility containing the armor power of a cat; Armon, the strongest of the 4 with the armor power of a ram; and last you have Kati, their pet cat. As for the human allies, you have Amanda Carnarvon, Presley's mom, his friend Walter and Elaine, as well as Milton Huxley, Presley's science teacher. As for the villains, you have Scarab, the evil sorcerer and the pharaoh's once advisor, who also transformed into Hera Stone, a wealthy person part of the museum; Heka, a talking snake also known as the Staff of Scarab. And then you have some other villains like Amut, Ka, Apep, Set in Anubis, Talos, Geb, Noon, Enchantra, Bastet, Sekhmet, the Eye of Darkness, Net, Bes, Arak, and his son Kimas. As the series progresses, the mummies continue to protect Presley while adapting into modern times, like being addicted to watching TV, as they call it the magic box, eating at their favorite burger place, playing video games, blending in with the crowd by wearing new clothes, or simply fooling around. And by fooling around, the mummies go jet skiing, dancing, attending the monster truck show, visiting Alcatraz as tourists, and my favorite, singing on stage as a band. Aside from this, because the mummies' powers are limited, they have to rest in their sarcophagi in order to rejuvenate their powers, and in case anyone happens to see them in person, they scare them off with these scary monster-like faces. When it also comes to transportation, through some cartoon logic, they end up having their own vehicles called the Hot Rod and many more to get around. As for the villains, aside from making the mummies go through rigorous tasks to make sure Presley is safe at all costs, Scarab is another sorry villain to add to the list of useless, cool-looking bad guys. The only redeeming storyline he has to offer is simply knowing how he escaped the tombs in the past thanks to explorers who freed him unknowingly. Not only are his motives extremely weak, he never succeeds a mission, as the type of shenanigans he pulls off to get Presley is funny, since he either turns into a little kid, watches TV when bored, or mopes around when really sick. It's very rare he has the upper hand. However, some episodes showcases the mummies getting their asses kicked, and other times he barely even shows up in majority of the episodes doing absolutely nothing. Not even his awesome looking transformation does justice. All the other villains are usually summoned through the portal, which is located by the western gate underneath the bridge. Regardless if someone is thrown back in, they somehow return again in further episodes. When it comes to storylines, it tends to drift away from its main purpose and includes so many fillers that I can't even keep track of, but some of the ones that stood out the most as pretty pointless is running low on water supply, working in the hospital, Mr. Huxley showing off his alter ego, or the biggest filler when Geb tries to regain the love of his wife again. As for Presley, seeing how the show does revolve around him, most times he's seen training otherwise known as Egyptsu to fight off bullies, hanging out in various locations, or constantly being rejected by his older crush Cynthia, who's his friend Walter's sister. This eventually causes a minor jealousy between his other friend Elaine, who has a crush on him, but nothing really progresses. Because Presley's desire to have a girlfriend is a huge plot in the show, oftentimes he asks the mummies for advice on relationships. And speaking of love interest, the show tends to offer some good variety of romantic feelings when Nefer-Tina falls for Apep, seeing how he's the only one who understands her true self. Rath and his ex-lover Enchantra, or my personal favorite, Ja-Kal being an absolute wreck because he misses his wife and son. This eventually creates a bond between him and Presley, as Ja-Kal acts like a father figure to him on multiple occasions, especially on Father's Day. However, when Presley's real dad shows up, since he's busy exploring the world, some bitter tension causes between the two. There is one episode, however, when Prince Rapse comes through the Western Gate, which then makes Presley jealous because the mummies no longer needed him, and if that's the case, he has the ability to lose him for good, or keep them for protection, but we can guess what he decided in the end. To add on to more family dynamics, Ja-Kal even faces his brother and nephew, which is an emotional trigger seeing how choices have to be made knowing they're on the wrong side. So because of this, we also learn the past of Scarab, as he's the one who killed Rapse's father, Amenhotep. One thing I do like about this show is the past sequences of some characters as we learn how they were in Egypt as protectors of Amenhotep and what they faced. Even though they repeat somewhat of the same storylines, it's always cool to see flashbacks and some history lessons. By the time you get to the end of the series, it unfortunately offers nothing much to progress the story. The mummies on some situations butt heads with each other due to being frustrated with commands or one-upping each other's tactics. For example, Nefer-Tina gets it the worst because she's constantly being mistreated because she's a girl, and this is probably one instance that's actually funny to say the least because in the first episode, the mummies didn't even realize Nefer-Tina was a girl as soon as we learned that she disguised herself as a man to work for the pharaoh. Eventually, in another episode when she finally changes her looks, the other three mummies realize how beautiful she is and start getting all horny and obsessed because they haven't gotten action in a million years, and watching her become a model didn't help either. You would think in the last few episodes the show would have Scarab become ruthless or uncover some more secrets, but in fact, it ends up shitting on you by focusing on two cops named Bob and Joe. Joe is one cop who appears in the second half of the series and tries to uncover who these mummies really are but never gets a chance to. So what does the last episode do? It shows Officer Joe working on his podcast listening to people claiming all the events they saw the mummies, which is a flashback episode, which pisses him off, thus resulting him in saying, I haven't witnessed them in over a year, so I'm just gonna give up and shut down this podcast. Not even Scarab gets to redeem himself, even though his ideas sometimes sounds intimidating, but like always, the bad guys never win, and we don't even know what happens to him, the mummies, Presley, or even his mom. It just finishes on a whim. This show has decent graphics, an interesting storyline if revolving around the past, and a good amount of action because there's no doubt that the fighting scenes do keep you entertained. However, not even the humor, which is something I enjoyed, can save the show if you really think about it. Out of 42 episodes, maybe a few were important and the rest were fillers. There's only so much you can do with this storyline that even the writers gave up and came up with this ridiculous plots. Although it was supposed to be dark like gargoyles, the show was given the friendly mark and sadly missed its target. A cool concept but poorly executed. Therefore, Mummies Alive, the animated series, gets a C/C+. Thanks for watching. Be sure to give a like and subscribe for more animated series reviews and stay tuned for the next episode.